You're listening to the Mind Over Murder podcast.
My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the unsolved Colonial Parkway Murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook group together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas. Welcome to Mind Over Murder. I'm Kristin Dilley.
And I'm Bill Thomas.
We're here with an after-action report from Savannah Crime Expo. But first, Mr. Thomas would like to share some of these stellar reviews that you fantastic people have been sending to us via all of our various social media platforms.
Every once in a while, Kristin Dilley lets me read a few reviews. Let's read a few reviews. I just wanted to share some of the things that people have had to say about Mind Over Murder, and we very much appreciate your kind thoughts and 5-star reviews. And if you haven't had a chance to write a review on every single platform you've ever thought about writing on, now would be a good time.
Yeah, we do not have reviews yet on Audible, and we are very excited to be on Audible because I listen to it all the time. I don't know about you, Bill, but I listen to Audible while I'm walking, not while I'm running, because I can't run and listen to somebody reading a book. But Audible is fantastic, and we don't have any reviews up there yet. If you have left us a 5-star review somewhere else, take a minute and leave it on Audible too, please. We really want to do a great job from our friends at Audible. So please leave us a review. We appreciate it.
So you don't run when you're training for your 5Ks. You don't run and listen when you're training for your 5Ks. Is that what
no,
you're saying?
I run and listen to music, but I can't listen to somebody read a book and then also run. I need something to keep me on tempo.
Oh, got it. I see.
Yeah.
I think if I were running, I wouldn't be able to hear over the coughing, hacking, and general seizure I'd be going through trying to keep up with you.
I started listening to, probably people are going to judge my music choice on this, and that's fine. You can judge away. I'm doing with what works for me. When John Carpenter recomposed the theme for Halloween for the new Halloween reboots, he did it in electronica. And so I have...
I was going to say that. I don't know if that has a great beat for running, but it does with a more of a rhythmic underpinning.
Yeah, it does, with a lot of electric guitar and synthesizer behind it. So there's a 10-minute version of the Halloween theme with a lot of loud electric guitar. And honestly, you turn that on and you imagine Michael Myers behind you.
I was going to say, this is probably a good motivator to keep you moving.
It is. Yeah, definitely. It works. So yes, that's how I motivate myself for my runs. Back to reviews. I don't know how we got there from reviews, but back to reviews.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to read a couple of reviews and thank everybody for their kind remarks. Here's one that actually starts with a question. Rebecca writes, does Australia ever do a census like they do in America? Could they see where he, the Somerton man, lived in 1948? And then I did a little research and wrote back. This is regarding the recent Colleen Fitzpatrick episodes that we did on the Somerton man case. And I wrote back, yes, Australia has been doing a census every 5 years dating back to the 1800s. And I know that they are continuing to do research into the Somerton man's background. So I'm sure they'll be looking at census data and other information like that. Here's another one regarding the Somerton Man episodes with Colleen Fitzpatrick. Fascinating. It's hard to overstate how significant this case is in the Australian consciousness, writes Marietta. And it's fascinating to hear how it was finally solved. The Australian Broadcasting Company, parentheses ABC, news website has run some great articles on the case recently, worth checking out. Many thanks to Colleen for sharing her story.
We love having Colleen on, and she's one of our very favorite guests. So thank you, Colleen, for joining us.
We can't thank her enough. Here's Linda writing, oh no, I didn't want it to end. Can't wait for part 2, which is up now. Y'all have the best shows. Keep them coming. I am definitely a big fan of you two.
Yay, thank you.
Very nice. And here's another one. This podcast with Catherine Ramsland was fascinating. I love the way this woman thinks. Her explanation about the Waisati complex was a true aha moment for me. Mm-hmm. Her statement about the brain wanting closure and how amateur sleuths and cops can get caught up this way in their thinking were so amazing. I would love to have been one of her students. Catherine was so on target when explaining how even in today's world, people are so ready to jump to conclusions and logic does not equal truth. I thought that was an interesting choice of phrase. And that's from Kristin. And she closes with, in my humble opinion, I think this is one of the most important podcasts that the Mind Over Murder team has done.
Wow. We love talking with Catherine Ramsland, and we were lucky enough to spend quite a good chunk of time with her at Savannah Crime Expo. We do love having her on as a guest and would love to have her again.
Yeah. I know one of the things we talked about, Kristin, after we had Catherine Ramsland on was we have to get her back. Mm-hmm. She's so interesting. And one of the things that I think the two of us enjoy the most about co-hosting a podcast is we get to meet these amazing people and learn from them, really, asking questions, seeing how their minds work. And this is all helpful to us as advocates, but it's also a fascinating process, I think.
Yeah, it's getting the criminology education that I didn't have a chance to do in college. And best of all, I don't really have to pay for it. So I think that's fantastic. That
is true. Here's the last one that I'll read, and again, with thanks. This is from Apple Podcasts, and Sue27 is the writer here. Here's what she had to say. Mind Over Murder podcast, 5 stars. Great podcast with a huge range of guests and thoughtful analysis. This is such a good listen. It's the rare combination of a guy of retirement age and a younger woman with differing spheres of experience who treat each other with respect and as equals. No second bananas here. The content is consistently excellent, thoughtfully constructed, and interesting. I especially appreciate the care with which the hosts treat their guests, not all of whom are podcasting professionals. Each guest is treated with respect while being asked intelligent, thoughtful questions, and every interview has been a great episode/couple of episodes. Drawing out people's experiences and expertise in a compelling way is tricky, and they do it every time. The consistently respectful approach the hosts have towards victims and families is no surprise given Bill's own history, but it's a rarity in true crime these days. Likewise, their careful disclosure of all the sources, parentheses, I do sense the English teacher in Kristin here, close paren, shows integrity and should be a model for other podcasts. Easy 5 stars. And that's from Sue. Wow.
I'm gonna print that. I'm legitimately gonna print that. I'm gonna put it on my wall and I'm gonna look at it every time I wonder, why am I doing this podcast while also holding a full-time job? Thank you very much, Sue. That's fantastic.
It really is. And Sue, this is a very thoughtful review. Lots of people write nice things and sometimes critical things too. And they're quick and it's just a few sentences or two. This is so well thought out. And the first thing I have to say is I had to laugh at the guy of retirement age, although that is true. I probably am old enough to retire, not that I'm going to. And then, Kristin, I'm sure you enjoyed being described as a younger.
I am younger than you.
You are. Then again, so is everybody.
Well, thank you, everybody, for leaving us amazing reviews. And if you would continue to do that, it is not to feed our egos, but it is to help drive our audience so that we have more people finding the podcast and allowing us to share more great content with you. We do appreciate that very much.
And thanks to Kristin for letting me read a few reviews. We don't do it very often, but every once in a while. And again, thanks to everybody.
While we're on the subject of fans who leave reviews, I do want to shout out a very awesome fan who came all the way to Savannah from Canada to meet us at Savannah Crime Expo. That blew my mind entirely. Patty, thank you so much for coming to see us and spend time with us. Bill, I know you got to talk a lot of great sports with her.
Which isn't really my thing either, but Patty was so incredibly nice. And then when she found out my family's from the Boston area, and then she's a big hockey fan, of course, I think if you're in Canada, that's a requirement. We were talking about the Boston Bruins and Bobby Orr, who is from her part of Canada. And I was telling her when I was a kid and we moved back to Boston when my dad was a naval officer, Bobby Orr was like such an icon in Boston, and the Bruins were incredibly successful pursuing the Stanley Cup and that sort of thing. And she was really funny. And so I'm not a big sports guy, but we had a great conversation about the influence of hockey in Canadian culture. And she did something really sweet, which is at one point, Kristin and I will explain a little bit more about Savannah Crime Expo. At one point, we're sitting there side by side at our table, and people are coming by and saying hello, and we're talking to them about the podcast. And Patty had come back. She had gone to panels and stuff, and then she would swing by again and say hello. And at one point, she was standing there, and I looked up at her and tried to begin to include her in whatever the conversation was. And she stopped me and she said, "No, I was just enjoying listening to the two of you talk." She said, "It's like listening to your podcast, except I'm standing next to you watching you talk." I don't even remember what it was we were talking about, but she was just sitting there with a funny smile on her face, just listening. And she didn't care to participate in the conversation at that moment because she wanted to listen to the two of us talk, which I was incredibly flattered by her willingness to travel so far.
Me too. That gobsmacked me. I mentioned that to, well, I mentioned it to everybody. I mentioned it to my boyfriend, my family, and my brother called me and he goes, "Wait, Mom said you had a friend come all the way, or a fan come all the way from Canada." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Does this mean you're important or something?" I don't think that's what it means at all. But he's like, "Nobody's ever come all the way from Canada to see me." I mean, okay.
She came to the beautiful city of Savannah, and she was definitely enjoying checking out the city and all the incredible architecture and the literature. And there's so much about the city that we love. Amazing food, great people, terrible weather.
Okay, for the first day, it wasn't great, but it improved. I know you're going to complain about the humidity, but you're from the north.
No, it was just a bit of a shock to the system to get down to Savannah, and it's really hot and really humid. That kind of weather is a bit past here in Connecticut, so we're starting to begin to feel a little bit like fall. And that felt like the tropics or something. It was really a bit of a shock to the system.
Yes, it was. I drove down with Joyce, Call Canada, who was joining us for our family advocacy panel. And we had a 7-hour drive on Friday, ending at like 3:30 on Friday afternoon. You took a leisurely flight. And then we had a 7-hour drive back up on Sunday, again, while you took a leisurely flight. So over a 72-hour period, I drove 14 hours.
This is true. Now, I want to be clear. I wasn't flying the plane. There were actually
that's true.
2 planes down, 2 planes back. Funny when we compared hours on the road with the flying and the changing planes and checking cars and driving from home to the airport and all that stuff. Time-wise, there wasn't much difference. But obviously, you're out on the road for several hundred miles, driving back and forth from Williamsburg to Savannah. It's a whole different story. Although you had great company and had a chance to catch up with Joyce Call Canada, who actually, not only did she do a phenomenal job on our advocacy panel, she actually said she might like to come again.
Yeah, I know. I was very excited by that. Like by the end of the trip, she was like, "Okay, we're flying next year, and then we're doing this and that and the other thing." Like we discussed that we wanted to do a ghost tour, which we didn't get a chance to do because there weren't enough hours in the day to do everything that we wanted to do. It was a pretty tight turnaround. And last year, I didn't have that tight turnaround. I stayed over Sunday and then I drove back leisurely on Monday because I took that extra day off school. This year, I didn't feel like I could afford to do that. My kids probably would have been fine without me, but I still felt like maybe it's too early in the year to start taking days off from my podcast. So I bit the bullet and drove back on Sunday. But now I really wish I had actually taken a little bit of extra time.
When you're talking about Savannah and the Savannah Crime Expo, the city is so beautiful and there's so much to do there. Friday night, when we got down there, I know that we met for dinner, just a quick casual dinner with yourself, Joyce, and myself. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, I texted some of the other people that we knew were going to be there, podcasters and so on. So I wrote to several different people and said, "Hey, what's up? Where are you guys?" I was trying to see if people were hanging out in a particular drinking establishment or something like that. every single person said, I'm on a ghost tour. They texted back a little while later and they said, hey, I'm on a ghost tour. Different people had different observations. I'm on a ghost tour and the host is fantastic. I'm on a ghost tour and we're getting absolutely soaked because it was raining buckets Friday night.
Yeah, it was. Oh, man.
There are so many things to see and do in Savannah. It's a wonderful city and we can't recommend it enough. And then you add on to that the Savannah Crime Expo, which was incredibly successful. Rachel Bell and her team did a phenomenal job in putting this thing together. And that was our second year attending. And this was our first year speaking about victims advocacy. Really just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, definitely. Savannah is, for any true crime fan who has read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Savannah is 100% your best true crime destination. That's why I have wanted to go to Savannah for so long, which is why last year when Savannah Crime Expo came to my attention, that's why I called you immediately and said, we're going to this. I don't care what you say.
And I did say.
Yes. Yeah. I really wanted to go to it though. And so luckily it was in Savannah, Riverfront, Hilton last year, but this year it was in the DeSoto. And that is a very short distance away from the Mercer Williams house, which is featured in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. In between sessions, when I needed to go take a walk to get my nerves under control because I had to speak publicly, I was able to walk right up to the Mercer Williams house and take some photos, and then further down to Forsyth Park and take photos there too.
Oh, and by the way, if you don't follow us on social media, on Mind Over Murder or the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook pages, I do recommend you check out Kristin's incredible photographs. She goes out early in the morning, late at night, whenever there's an opportunity, even while taking these little walks. And your photography was incredibly beautiful. You have a great eye. I've told you this before. I think of myself as a bit of an amateur photographer, but I'm not in your league. You really do have a great eye for architecture and incredible visuals and presenting things in a way that's very interesting. I know people love the kind of foggy, rainy, backlit, spooky photography that you took at one point. And I do recommend that people check it out if they get a chance.
I love photography. I love it so very much. And I value going on trips like these because I get a chance to walk around and take all sorts of really different, interesting photos of various things that I wouldn't get to see otherwise. I did catch some flack from people online from my set of photos that I took early in the morning walking down to Savannah, down to the river. And look, I understand, especially in light of the fact that Savannah is maybe not the, I'm not going to say it's crime ridden. I'm not going to say it's the most safest place either, but I was very careful when I took my walks. I had my thumb on 911 the entire time. I'm very situationally aware. And I know that there are going to be any number of people who are going to say, okay, that's not enough. Why would you put yourself at risk? I'm also not going to live my life being dictated by fear. And so I did what I could to keep myself safe. I wanted to go out and take my morning walk like I always do whenever I go to a new city. And I was very cognizant of what was around me. I actually physically ran when I felt like I needed to, but there weren't very many people out at that hour. And so I was able to go get some nice photos. So I appreciate the concern of everyone who was like, hey, be careful. There were some people who basically were like, okay, well, that was dangerous and stupid.
I think that was a little strong.
Yeah, I'm sorry you think so. And I understand that life is full of risk. But I take that risk every day going to school. I'm a teacher. I take that risk every day going to school, and I take that risk every day when I go jogging. I'm going to continue to try to enjoy myself, being as careful as I can in the process. So for everybody who was concerned, I appreciate the concern. I promise you I did my very best to be safe. And for everybody who called me flat out careless or stupid, sorry you think so.
No, and you use the expression situationally aware, which is an important one. You're a true crime podcaster. We certainly talk about crime and being smart and thoughtful and aware and preventing violent crime from taking place. I was surprised how strongly some people reacted to the idea that you went out for an early morning walk. And at the same time, when you went through the steps that you had taken to be safe, I thought you had done everything you could short of just staying in your room.
Yeah.
Which you don't go to a city like Savannah and want to just hang out in your hotel room. You want to get out. You want to see the place. It's incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the things we're all lucky when we're talking about Savannah is that Savannah survived the Civil War essentially intact, so that there's this incredible amount of beautiful homes and businesses and very interesting street after street of absolutely gorgeous homes and places that would just take your breath away. They're just so beautiful. And you want to get out and see the place. And if we were tied up all day Saturday, for example, in a very full schedule at the Savannah Crime Expo from early in the morning until well into the evening, your only time to get out there was either before or after, which meant it was going to be early in the morning or it's going to be well into the evening.
Yeah. And Joyce and I did walk home from our speakers dinner. We walked back to our hotel. And again, trying to be as careful as we possibly could be. And Savannah is a city where it's beautiful to try to walk around. And we always do our best to feel safe. But as any probably actuary will tell you, there is no such thing as 100% safety and certainty. And I wanted to go out and enjoy my walk. Joyce and I wanted to walk off our incredible meal that we had at the speakers dinner, which is why we walked back to the hotel. More on that in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I feel like we had a good time. We had a successful trip. And at no point did I ever feel like I was in personal danger from anyone or anything that I saw around me.
And I had walked home alone both years from events. Never felt any discomfort. And the other thing is I tried to walk along main streets when possible.
Yeah.
So that you could duck into a restaurant or a pub or whatever, and there were a lot of people around it. I tried not to walk down dark, empty streets by myself. I recognize that Savannah, just like any other major city, has crime issues. But at the same time, I think if you're aware of your surroundings and careful and prepared, I think you're generally okay. And in both situations, last year and this year, I walked home late at night and didn't suffer effects from walking 10 or 20 blocks. And
you, I, and Joyce are all in the situation of having lost someone that we cared about to violent crime. If anything, we are more, I think, aware of the terrible things that can happen to people when you are just out and about living your life. But I don't think it's healthy for us to dwell on it or for us to not live our lives to our fullest and best careful capability. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't know if you share that view.
I do. You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. We're back here at Mind Over Murder. Speaking of living life to the fullest, we haven't even gotten into the actual event itself. Savannah Crime Expo is a one-day event. It's all day Saturday, and it's actually quite a long day. And it's a small-scale crime con.
Yeah, I would say that's good.
With a similar high-level national speakers, but with a significantly smaller footprint. There were about 200 people there.
Probably, yeah, I think so.
One of the things that's fantastic about this particular event at Savannah Crime Expo, you have the same level of speakers that you would see at CrimeCon, but you have much greater access to those individual speakers. So they're around, they're very approachable, and even in an event with 200 people in a ballroom, when the person is done speaking and they thank everybody and they're making their way out, you can walk right up to them. So you have an opportunity to speak to national level experts. And it's just as friendly as CrimeCon, but unlike a situation where there'd be 20 or 30 people standing around maybe waiting to talk to Dr. Henry Lee or whomever, here you might only have 2 or 3 people. So you actually have a real shot at getting some face time with amazing people, whether you want to ask them a specific question or just tell them how much you enjoy their work or their television show or whatever it is, and get them to sign your copy of their book, which we were fortunate enough to do. Those kind of opportunities are presented because of the intimacy of Savannah Crime Expo.
Yeah, exactly. And we were able to get considerable FaceTime with our guest, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. We were very happy to be able to spend time with her, both on writing matters and just like investigative matters. We were able to spend time with Cheryl McCullum, who is one of our very favorite people in the entire universe.
Yes.
She was there, and she's such a gem. I absolutely adore her. And she's just the warmest, sweetest person that you could possibly want to be around, but she's also a person that you absolutely do not want to be on the wrong end of.
No. And if Mac also had a number of her students from the Cold Case Investigative Research Institute in tow.
Yes.
And they were amazing young people, very diverse, a lot of women. One of the students, she mentioned something about him coming down to Atlanta where he has family, and he was being a little tentative about it. And I pulled him aside when she stepped away for a moment, and I said, I think you chimed in here too, Kristin. I said, you want to take her up on this.
Yes.
Because
you do.
Mac will introduce you to literally everyone. This guy is studying forensics. He's in a 4-year program, really smart young guy. And he very much wants to move his career forward. And I said, if Cheryl Mac McCollum says you need to come down to Atlanta and you have a place to stay, you need to get yourself down there because she will introduce you to everybody, and she'll probably take you along while she's out working cases. You never know the opportunities that Mac would put forward for a young person like that. And I talked to him about it twice because I saw him again later and said, you are taking her up on that offer? And he said, yes, I am. He was so blown away by her generosity. And of course, we know her and we know what a connector she is. Because every time we were talking to somebody, she would say, oh, do you know so-and-so? And she'd bring us into the conversation. She makes it a goal. Oh, you need to know Kristin Dilley. And then when she's talking to you, she's, do you know Greg McCrary or whoever it is? She wants to have everybody who's got something to say and have an opportunity to connect so we all know each other.
She's a real gem. The young man that you were talking about in question, he had come over to our booth and he was clearly a little hesitant. He was one of Rachel's friends, and I had asked him, just trying to get him to talk a little bit. I said, why are you interested in true crime? What is your area of expertise or that you're interested in pursuing? And he was talking to me about it. And when he said forensics, I said, okay, you've got to meet Mac. So I pulled Mac out of the room and said, come here and meet this guy. And so she was making the offers and things like that. And then she saw our friend Kathy Kleiner Rubin, who had come as well, not as a speaker, but Kathy was just there to hang out and participate and be around. She was keeping it on the down low a little bit, but I saw Mac pull her over and she asked this young man, she said, are you familiar with Ted Bundy? And he goes, oh yeah, of course, everybody's familiar with Ted Bundy. And she goes, are you familiar with the fact? And I saw her go into teacher mode. She goes, are you familiar with the fact that he had a surviving victim? And he goes, no, I didn't. And then Kathy just steps right up and she goes, I'm Kathy Kleiner. I'm that victim. And his jaw dropped. It hit the floor. And it just, the awe on his face. Those are the kind of moments that as a teacher, I am absolutely thrilled by when you see somebody get interested and go, oh, wow. What a lot there is to learn. This is great. He was blown away, and I love seeing Mac make that connection for him.
By the way, speaking of Kathy Kleiner Rubin, we had a chance to spend some time with her. She's working on her book on surviving Ted Bundy, in addition to the other challenges that she's faced down in her life. We can't wait to read it. It looks like it's going to be out next summer.
She said next summer. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if she has a working title for it yet, but we are absolutely certain that this book is going to be amazing.
She told me that it's probably one of the hardest emotional journeys that she's gone through, but she did say that she did not want to spare any details whatsoever. So she told her co-author, we can get graphic about this. She basically said that her reasoning behind this was to dispel the notion that Ted Bundy is a charmer. He's not. He's a psychopath. He's a horrible human being. And so she said she went into as much detail as possible just to show, like, this is what he does. He is a monster. And she said she wanted to make sure that she gave voice to all of the victims. So she gave all of their stories in as much complete detail as she could, which, I mean, bravo, Kathy, bravo. That's amazing.
And speaking of great new books, our friend Catherine Ramsland had advance copies of her new book, which is a fictional book, Ice Cream Man.
Yes.
In it, we haven't had a chance to read it yet unless you got an early start. Because
I did a couple of pages.
I had it on the plane with me, but also had 2 other books that I'm still making my way through, including one of Casey Sherman's books. So I haven't jumped into Ice Cream Man yet. as she was explaining to us, it has a petite, blonde criminologist who sounds an awful lot like Dr. Ramsland. And a friend who's a psychic who sounds very much like a friend of hers who was also in attendance. She's writing about what she knows. She's chosen to go down the fictional road, which she's done before. And of course, as we talked about with her a few weeks ago, she's written 70 books now.
I don't know
how she finds the time, in addition to being a college professor and forensics expert, appearing in movies and television shows, and as an expert witness. I don't know when she sleeps, but...
No, me either.
I'm looking forward to reading I Scream Man by Dr. Catherine Ramsland. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was very happy to get that. And she was gracious enough to spend some time with us talking about our own writing pursuits and then some investigative stuff that we thought she would find interesting and which she seemed to. So we've got a couple things in the works there. She was also good enough to introduce us to Special Agent Greg McCrary from the FBI, who I'm also very much looking forward to getting to know a little bit better. I adore profilers, and so I'm looking forward to having some conversations with Greg about the various cases that he's worked.
Back to Cheryl McCollum, she also introduced us to Ashley Wilcott. Many of you know from Court TV and her many appearances on television. She's very interested in learning more about the Colonial Parkway murders, and I'll be talking to her sometime in the next few days as well. So this is the kind of thing. Now, obviously, we have a little bit of an agenda. In other words, we want to promote Mind Over Murder. We want to meet with folks. We want to learn from them. But then when an opportunity comes along to meet someone like Judge Wilcock and to have her say, I'd like to learn more about the Colonial Parkway murders. Here's my phone number. Give me a call when things settle down, when we're back from Savannah. What an opportunity. So much in the same way you're going to be following up with Greg McCrary, we're so thrilled to have an opportunity to spend a few minutes with these folks, listen to them present, and then for them to make the kind of offers that they've made where I want to learn more about things you're working on. It's just incredibly important, and we're very grateful to Rachel Bell and the whole team for putting this thing together. It afforded us this opportunity.
Exactly. I was telling you earlier offline that I think our panel at Savannah Crime Expo, I'm thinking of that as like a dry run for an eventual larger crime con appearance. I do not want to be a panelist again. I will happily take the photos and build the PowerPoints and things like that. But I don't want to be up there on stage again. It is entirely too nerve-wracking. Everybody was very sweet and supportive and said they thought I'd done well, but I don't want to be up there again. That was just awful.
I thought you did great.
Thank you.
Both you and Joyce Call Canada, who again doesn't enjoy public speaking too terribly much, both of you had said how nervous you were, but then I thought you both settled down very quickly and thought we had a terrific conversation, but it doesn't sound like something that you enjoy. Whereas I could just go up there and... Seriously,
all I would have had to do was hand you a mic and you could have vamped for about an hour. But I also told Bill offline, everybody, that he could have a conversation with a brick wall and it would work out just fine. I don't have it in me. For all that I am in front of groups of teenagers every day, and arguably they are a tougher audience, I still find it very difficult to get up in front of people and speak. So while I can handle it in my own classroom, it was difficult. I think I did settle down eventually. I think it went well, but it's not something that I'm going to seek out again. I don't think.
I am completely fine with it. I think there's a couple of caveats for me. One is it helps if I have some sort of structure. So I have an outline or something to follow, bullet points or something like that. And it helps, obviously, if it's a topic I know and care about. So if we're talking about victims advocacy or true crime or the Colonial Parkway murders specifically or Mind Over Murder, things like that, I'm very comfortable. If you ask me to talk about, I don't know, I wasn't passionate about or didn't know a lot about, obviously, that would be a whole different story. But I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's interesting. Now, at the same time, you guys were saying how when we were at the bar on Friday night grabbing a bite, there was a group of women that were very dressed up.
Yeah.
And then as they finished their meal, they were putting on these lightweight clear ponchos, which basically look like a trash bag with a hood.
Yeah. Yeah, it was raining. Yeah.
And I was curious as to why they were doing that. Of course, it was pouring down rain. And then I went up and asked them. And then it turns out one of them was getting married, and this was the bachelorette party. And they were all dressed up and having some cocktails and food, and then I think heading out for the evening. And I'm sure more festivities would follow. Kristin, you were saying you wouldn't be comfortable going up to a group of strangers and asking them what was up. And whereas you and Joyce watched me go over there, and I didn't want anything from them other than the fact that I was curious as to why they were putting plastic bags over their dresses.
Joyce and I had figured out already it was a bachelor party or a bachelorette party, and that you don't get dressed up and wearing sandals and one woman in white and the others all in matching black dresses. We figured it was a bachelorette party, but we wouldn't have gone over and said anything about it. Yeah. I don't have it in me to do that sort of thing. Conversation and social interaction is one of the things that drains my battery. And if I know that I'm going to be on the next day and talking to guests and fans and various other people, I want my energy to be there for them and not I expended it talking to a stranger in the bar last night.
It's so funny because you said this to me at CrimeCon as well. When I am out like that, I actually get more energized.
Because you're an extrovert and I'm an introvert, bud.
Yeah, I guess so. It's funny. You said that drains your batteries, whereas for me, provided my voice holds up, an interesting conversation that leads to another interesting conversation that sets up more conversation the next day. To me, I get more excited about being there.
I know. Yeah. This is a really good example of why we're a good podcast team. We are total opposites on that. Yeah. I have a perfectly fine time when I'm out there talking to people. I enjoy talking to people when it's about a topic that I'm good at. I like talking to people about crime and various other things. Yeah. But it's after a while, if I do it for hours and hours on end, it drains my battery. I need to go be quiet, which is why you went out to go hang out with podcasters and Joyce and I went back to the hotel.
Yeah, that's right.
I took a shower and read my book while you were probably out. I don't know. How late were you out, by the way?
Since everybody was already out getting soaked ghost hunting, I actually ended up heading home at a reasonable hour. Had the opportunity presented itself to go out, and even though I'm not a big drinker, to bar hop with the true crime podcasters, I probably would have done that.
But I know the same thing as in Vegas. I know you went out with a group after that, and I'm like, you know what? Let me go back, go back into my room. And it's never even I'm going to go back in my room and turn on TV. It's I'm going to go back in the room and read for a little bit
and just be quiet.
And just be quiet. Yeah. Yeah. That's what recharges my batteries. That's why at the end of a school day, it can be rough to come back here and be like, okay, we've done a school day, full day, worked with kids, some of whom are quite needy. And then we're going to come here and we're going to do a podcast too.
Yeah, I get it. I really do.
But if it's somebody that I'm interested in, like if I know we're going to talk with Catherine Ramsland, I can get my battery back up enough to spend time. And yeah, we had a really good time at the expo. I enjoyed it. But by the time we were done with our panel and we got to the speakers dinner, despite the fact that we were sharing a table with Dr. Henry Lee of all people,
I know,
which was amazing. That blew my mind. There were definitely moments when I was having trouble keeping a focus on what he was saying because my battery was starting to drain.
And of course, he's so amazing and interesting. He and his wife, Angel, are just the nicest people.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the dinner was absolutely wonderful. It was at Vic's on the river, which has a beautiful view, and we could see the river boats going by. Just had a spectacular dinner. Dr. Lee's soft-spoken, and the background noise in the restaurant was actually pretty high.
Yeah.
So that all the various speakers were seated at different tables. So sometimes it was a little bit of a struggle to hear Dr. Lee's fascinating stories. And interestingly, he is based out of New Haven, Connecticut, which is about an hour and 15 minutes south of where I live. But when he found out I lived in Litchfield County, Connecticut, he then started telling us all these incredible stories about murders and other cases that he had helped investigate in Litchfield County, which of course were stories we'd never heard before. he has such an incredible, almost photographic memory of the details of cases. These went back a few years.
Yeah.
And so he started telling us these stories, and we were like, wow, this is amazing stuff. He's like, oh, you're from Litchfield County. And from listening to the stories, you think that Litchfield County, which is this sort of very beautiful, kind of bucolic area, a lot of woods and beautiful scenery, he made it sound like Murder Central.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh my God, Bill, like, how do you not know about these cases? It's crazy.
We don't even have a police force in my small town. We are dependent on the Connecticut State Troopers, who are about 15 minutes away. He told us these incredible stories, and he and his wife were absolutely lovely. But what a privilege to sit with this man and talk with the two of them about all of these amazing cases.
And I have some friends that are only tangentially aware of true crime, but even the people who only barely know about it, they know his name. I mentioned to one of my friends at work that I got to have dinner with Dr. Henry Lee, and he said, oh my God, shut up. I said, no, I did. He goes, did you talk about the OJ case? And I said, no, we didn't talk about the OJ case. And he was like, why not?
He's worked on so many other cases.
Yeah.
Who wants to talk about OJ? I want to talk about
all
the other cases he's worked on. He's probably worked on hundreds, if not maybe thousands of cases by now.
I'm going with thousands, probably.
I would say so.
I would say it's rare to find someone who transcends their field so entirely that, like, even people who are not a part of the field know you. But I didn't actually have to explain who Dr. Henry Lee was to most people who remember the Simpson trial, because they remember him from that. And like I said, my friends at work were like, you did not get to have dinner with Henry Lee. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? It was quite an experience. We had just grabbed a table near the window because we wanted to be near the window. I wanted to shoot photos, of course. I was expecting maybe Mac was going to come over and sit with us or something else. I did not expect Henry Lee to come into the room and just be like, yeah, this table looks good. We're going to come sit here. I'm like,
sit with these nice people.
And it was literally just the five of us.
Yeah,
it blew my mind. There was no one else vying for his attention. It was just all of us sitting there having a really good dinner, soup to dessert, and listening to Henry Lee talk about murder, Dr. Henry Lee talk about murder. And it was just unreal. Like, that experience alone was worth Savannah. Not to mention all the amazing architecture and meeting the fans and getting to talk with all of our favorite people. Like, that did it for me just by itself.
No, it was really an amazing weekend. I thought that Savannah Crime Expo was so successful. I actually think they need to consider maybe expanding the program a little bit. Since most of us were there by Friday evening, I'm actually thinking they might want to consider maybe doing some sort of kickoff event Friday night. Some of the other podcasters that we saw said they would love to maybe host a live podcast event, maybe Friday when we all get there, and maybe have 3 or 4 or 5 different podcasts, maybe do something together and record that for a live event. I thought that sounded like a fantastic idea.
Yeah, we can all do a ghost tour together in the party hearses.
I did feel bad that we didn't manage to squeeze in a ghost tour.
Yeah, me too. Me too. For anybody who isn't aware what I mean when I say party hearse, there is a brand of ghost tour where they take you around to the various haunts in a hearse with a cutout roof, so that you can get pictures and things like that. Joyce and I were walking along, taking some photos along one of the squares, and we see multiple party hearses, crammed full of people circling the square. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We don't have party hearses in Williamsburg, though we do have ghost tours.
I know that from talking to Nina Instead from Already Gone and Dr. Shiloh from LA Not So Confidential and Lance from the Missing and Crawl Space podcasts, everybody was talking about what a phenomenal time they had at Savannah Crime Expo and in the city of Savannah. So I think it might be great to take that Saturday program, which at this point is very long, and maybe move a little bit of it into Friday evening. And maybe, if you like the idea of maybe doing something on Sunday or maybe a breakfast or something like that. Yeah. There was so much packed into a very full day on Saturday They also did breakout sessions as well. Many of these experts did smaller breakout sessions. So if you were particularly interested in forensics, for example, or crime scene investigation, you could have a smaller scale discussion with Dr. Laura Petler or Dr. Catherine Ramsland. Cloyd Steiger was there. There were so many amazing people that you were able to break off and do smaller scale panel discussions. If anything, Saturday is almost too full.
Yeah, I think there would be a great willingness on people's part to do it over 2 days. And I know for sure if we decide to do this next year, and I see no reason why we wouldn't, I definitely want to go down on a Thursday night. So that way we have all day Friday to hang out, do ghost tours and stuff like that, and then do the expo on Saturday. I think that would be a great lot of fun. We've so enjoyed talking to you guys about our experiences at Savannah Crime Expo. I do encourage you to go take a look at the photography. It is all courtesy of me, and I think they're all pretty excellent. So do take a look at our social media page, and we will find a way to share our presentation materials as well so that you can take a look at our information about family advocacy in the Colonial Parkway Murders. That's going to do it for this episode of Mind Over Murder. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawl Space Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.